Hey gang, Scott Davenport here. Following up on the infrared topic from a few weeks ago, well, maybe a little longer than a few weeks ago. And I hadn't covered the processing side of things. I am doing some more infrared photography. I've been working it into my various shoots. But I've been really more focused on trying to figure out exactly my workflow for dealing with the infrared photos, and primarily it comes down to dealing with white balance. And I tried a few different things, even including Sony's Imaging Edge software. It's the stuff that comes with directly from Sony, works on their RAW files. That didn't really fit in well with my flow, and I stuck with Lightroom. And if you are working with Lightroom, you've done stuff with infrared, you probably have seen this technique before. It's creating your own custom DNG profile and making that snap into Lightroom so you can use it. So if you've seen that before, then you can skip the rest of this video, or if you want a refresher on it, or it's something new to you, let me show you what the problem is that we have with infrared photos in Lightroom, and then how to go and address it. So the problem is, here is one photo. It's just nothing done to it. And we can see that the white balance is all the way down to the left. There is no other adjustments here. And if I do anything to start, warming it up, it just becomes more and more red. The tint wise gets, this, bluish, and then ultimately it just becomes, ungodly purple. None of these types of settings work. Daylight will look terrible. Cloudy will look terrible. Nothing is going to look correct, even as shot, as much as I'm using, setting that white balance point out in the field. Again, that's more for metering. It's less about getting an accurate white point. So what can we do? How do we fix this? Well, we can use this other program that Adobe provides. It's called DNG Profiler. Of course, you need a DNG file. But you take your infrared photo from Lightroom, and we're going to export it as a DNG. And that just creates a new RAW file in the DNG format. Stick that out anywhere on your computer. It's really going to be a throwaway in terms of keeping. You don't have to keep it around. It's just we're going to use one of these photos as a baseline to create a camera profile. So I'm going to export this out, and I'm going to show you the DNG Profiler and how we can create that custom camera profile, and we'll see it magically show up in Lightroom. So this is the DNG Profiler from Adobe. All I've done is opened up that DNG I just exported, and you get a few options in this table here. You got color tables, tone, color matrices, some various options, and some type of chart, which I don't have a color checker, so I'm not going to open that up. But what I want to focus on is color matrices, and very down at the bottom here, we've got white balance calibration, and so we can adjust this to make sense of this photo, this infrared photo. And what I've found is if I go all the way cool, it gets too blue. But if I go somewhere in the neighborhood of like a -80 to 85, I get a pretty good grayish tone over the whole photo. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This just gives you the latitude when you're back in Lightroom to be able to fine tune that white balance. And so once you've set that value, you just come up to File and export this profile. And the export tool will know where to put that profile. You give it a name. You can see I've got a couple here already, and I'll explain what juiced is in just a minute. Just give it some type of name that makes sense, like your camera name plus the word infrared, and save this out. And the tool knows where on your computer to go put this, so it will show up in Lightroom in that camera calibration area. We'll get there next. So I've saved one of a basic profile where all I did was lower the white calibration. The other thing you can do is you can play with the tone curve here. And so, I can add, a kind of a contrast curve in here, giving this, some type of punch automatically. And I just went to the trouble of saving this just to see how it worked. But in practice, I don't really use one. This is what I called my juiced profile, where I've already done some pre-processing. And the reason I don't use it is because once I bake this into a camera profile, I can't really undo it in Lightroom. I'd rather just use the curves tools in Lightroom and fine-tune based on each individual photo. But you do have quite a bit of thing that you can do in this profiler. And if you like to have this type of look on every one of your photos, great, go ahead and add in a curve, go ahead and export a new camera profile, and you can have a variety of choices in Lightroom. Once you've done this, you're done with the DNG file. You can throw it away. Let's go back into Lightroom and I'll show you where this shows up, how to select it, and then how to continue working with the photo. All right, so we're back in Lightroom. You've created your camera profile. You may have to restart Lightroom for it to show up, but once you've done that, you go into the camera calibration panel and you will see those recipes that you created. And I'll just pick this one here, which is my Sony A7R deep black and white infrared. And notice the shift in the white balance. Again, that's the only thing I had in that recipe, but just enough to make it more gray. I got rid of that color cast. And from here, I have more latitude. I can start to, wiggle this around a little bit if I need to tweak it. And for this one, I'm just kind of rolling my finger on the trackpad. Somewhere around there looks pretty good. I can do the same thing with tint, where it's going to be very subtle changes, if anything. And that one I don't think I needed to do. Well, that's the default. We're not going to do that. We're going to go back to that -10 that it was at. The other thing that I will do, anyway, that's the white balance part of it, right? So that's kind of the magic part of getting a good baseline in Lightroom. Use DNG Profiler, get yourself a camera profile, and then select it when you open up your infrared photo. But from here, the other thing I'll usually do is I'll go to the black and white mode. Again, I like my infrareds to be black and white, and so I don't care about the color part of it. So I switch to black and white. Obviously turns off certain sliders and so forth. And then from here, I adjust it like I normally would. So, this is pretty underexposed. That seems to be pretty common for my infrareds. I'll start increasing this up, add contrast, do the normal stuff that I would do, and adding, clarity and so forth. And I'm not going to go through the rest of the processing on this, but this is the basics of it. I'll usually do the basic panel, and then I'll do something with tone curve. I usually want to do some type of more manual or targeted adjustment. And if it's a photo I really like, then it goes on to my other tools, on one photo and the like. So the key takeaway on this really is to work this into my workflow in the most seamless manner was to use DNG Profiler, and I'll put a link in the show notes below of where you can find that tool, and make a custom profile, snap it into Lightroom, and then I'm basically off to the races. Everything is good to go, and I can even create, this might be one of the few places I'll use a preset automatically on any infrared photo where it will grab that camera profile, turn it to black and white, and probably that would be it. Everything else becomes my manual adjustments from there. So that's kind of how I'm doing the processing on the infrared photos. I'd like to hear what you're doing. If you're doing something different or you've got tips for me, infrared is still new to me. And so I am, like a sponge. I'm absorbing as much information about it as I can to help fine tune my own process. I'd like to hear about it. Leave me comments in the video below. Shoot me a message on my website, however you'd like to get a hold of me. Until next time, that's it. My name's Scott Davenport. I'll see you again soon.